Yo, what up y'all, IntraVenus here, back with another episode. Today I have the largest package that I've ever brought on the show. This thing is massive. I got this from AliExpress for less than $73 total, shipping and everything. This is the largest box I've ever ordered from China. And what we have here is a Powkiddy device called the A13, which is sort of like a laptop mixed with an arcade machine. This is not like the other arcade games that I featured on the show previously. Those were toys, more or less, that worked, played games. This is a well-made, from what I understand, portable option for playing arcades. This thing has a 10-inch screen, and we'll get it out of here. Let's go ahead and remove these pads. It's got a red and black color scheme here going on. It almost looks like a gigantic Nintendo DS pulling it out of the box. We got a manual here and a cord. USB-C, I believe. Yep, looks like a USB-C cable here. And a very simple, pretty simple instruction manual. Not a whole lot going on there. Half of it's in Chinese. Go ahead and put that to the side and take this bad boy out. It's got some nice weight to it. Let's see here. You can see inside the buttons. We got HDMI on the back, 2 USB ports, a headphone jack, memory card, USB-C, and a power button. Ooh, it's got a pretty tight hinge. I imagine that's because it hasn't really been opened up before. That'll likely loosen up over time, but it feels very sturdy. In fact, I think that might be a metal hinge there connected to the plastic. We've got our button layout here. We've got some protective plastic across the device. So in here is where the joystick is kept. Looks like you slide it out. Yeah. Just kind of roll your finger on there. Looks like they did not screw it in all the way. It wasn't all the way screwed on. This is just like the joystick that you'd have on an actual arcade machine. So you screw it in here and then you have your fully playable arcade. And when you're done, unscrew that, pop it back in its little holder and fold it up. It's got some nice clickiness to it. Feels just like an arcade stick. Loud clicks. Not extremely loud, but these clicky buttons, they're not something you'd be playing in a quiet room. That's for sure. Not when you're trying to keep other people from waking. Let's turn it on here. We got the welcome screen. And a bunch of games. Screen looks pretty nice. Alright, so taking you into the future now, because after I opened this thing up, there was a lot to learn. Sure, it played right out of the box. Played a lot of games. You could play everything up through PS1 really nicely on this. But I did learn that there was a custom firmware option. You can add Batocera to this. And I also was finding some trouble playing the custom firmware they had thrown on here already, which looks different than most of the firmwares that I see in videos about this. Mine look different, and I'll show you that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to turn this on, and we're going to have 3 parts to this video. The first part, I'm going to cover turning this on without any micro SD card in there at all, because it does play and it does have a handful of games on there. So first and foremost, let's turn it on with no SD card at all. And you can see here, this thing is so massive, I had to get a different view than usual because you really got to see what's going on here. Hi. There's our welcome screen. I see my battery's almost dead. It's important that if you want to install custom firmware on this, to know that you can still use it if you think you messed up the machine, somehow the firmware you installed on your memory card is not working. Well, first of all, make sure you keep the original card from this. You know, if you're going to do a different memory card, get a new one. Try to do all your experimentation on there. And if all else fails, you still have a working console with a small amount of built-in memory without any SD card at all. This thing gets very loud. And in this setup, we have 7 volume settings here. So you can see up in the top corner, it goes up to 7. We have a battery display, which I said is getting low there. We're going to have to charge it before the next segment. And then we have our list of 10 built-in, oh, nope, more than 10 built-in games. Let's see how many games are built into this. So we got 30 games built in. A few of them are not written in Chinese, like Super Fight. Let's see what that is. Super Fight 1. This looks like an NES style game here. Gets very loud. Obviously what we have here seems to be a Contra clone, I think. You get an idea here, and you can see that this actually has a version of RetroArch built in. And for the rest of this segment, I'm going to zoom in on the screen a little further. Yes, you can do some things. You can record your saves even with this built in. If you happen to get it with no memory card at all, you may find it like this. And know that you can have some fun before you go installing more. See, I don't know what all this is. This is, you know, it seems we got some 8-bit games that are, it's pretty cool actually. Now one thing that I have found is that 8-bit games are way more fun on this. Way more fun than on like a regular TV with the controller. So let's go ahead and check out one more random game here, and that's pretty much going to cover playing this console or arcade unit without any card installed. And this is, you know, who knows what's going on here. Unable to play because I can't read this stuff, but you get the idea. So let's go ahead and pop the SD card in. The one that it came with, and I'll show you how that is. It's loaded with games, got a bunch of stuff on there. However, I found that it would freeze fairly often, freeze up. And that's the main reason I decided to install the custom firmware Batocera, which is on the memory card that I'll be putting in this third segment. So first we're going to start with this bad boy. Let's go. Alright, so we saw how this operated without any memory card in here at all. So now we're going to go ahead and put in the memory card that was provided, which is loaded with games, a 64 gig kind of generic memory card here. And I want to show you how this works. It's got a whole bunch of consoles. The games play well when they want to play, but I think it's a mixture of bad ROM collection and bad software that makes it freeze up often in this mode, but you'll see. Alright, so this is the screen that you'll likely be greeted with if you get one of these now, though like I said before, this seems to be a little different than what I've seen other YouTubers feature on their channel as the way the software and user interface looks. So we've got a full list of games here, which can just go on and on and on. And and it just froze up right there. That quick, froze up. So we'll have to restart it. Again, we've got the list here. You can go and keep on going down or to the right or left to turn pages or to individually select. There's a lot of games listed here. Obviously, it doesn't really like to look at them all at once. Here we have the R button and L button. R button, L button instead of shoulder buttons. So you're going to use those to cycle through these menus up here. So let's go ahead to the type. And we've got CPS, Final Burn, Alpha, Famicom, Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy Color, Game Gear, Mega Drive, Neo Geo, PlayStation, and Super Famicom. Now these all play when they want to play. So let's start out with some CPS. So here I have selected King of Fighters, but it has frozen again. So you could just see me instead. Restart. So it doesn't really seem to like me picking from the lists at all individually. You can see I've played games on here before. You can save favorites, you can save states. Here you can search for ROMs, which I've also heard that the previous user interface didn't have an ability to search. So let's go ahead and search for something and see if this works. Let's play The Simpsons. Okay, we're going to press X up here to switch to the side with the menu after we type it in. We got some different versions of The Simpsons here. Simpson Family, The Simpsons, I assume maybe The Simpsons is the one I want. I'm looking for the classic Simpsons arcade. We got something going here. This looks like Bartman meets Radioactive Man. Not what I expected, but it's playing. So this looks like the NES Bartman meets. Yep, this is an NES game. Not the best Simpsons game, but you know what? As I run into him, it does, you know, all stuff, or maybe not this game so much, 'cause it's not a good game. These NES games do actually play really well on here, and a good example would be Contra. I want to play the Simpsons arcade, though. Here we go. This is the screen we want to see. We'll hit our select button once it's booted up, and select will coin up any of your games that you're playing arcade mode. This is the kind of thing. I bought this for stuff like this. Love this game. So we got our coin in. This is obviously the 4-player, one control. There's a couple different versions of this ROM. It depends on what cabinet they're emulating, because there was a version of the cabinet where you picked a different control to control a different. So you get the Marge controls to control Marge and stuff. So that's meant to emulate a 4-controller cabinet. This one's emulating a 1-controller cabinet, I guess. This plays so good on here. This is absolutely the best way to play this if you don't have an actual arcade in your house. Whoops! Press the back button to escape. Plays so good. This thing, when it wants to play, which, you know, in this, like I said, this UI that you get when you buy it, when it wants to play, it plays really well. You can play all kinds of things on here. So let's go back over here and we'll do some Mortal Kombat Trilogy is on here for the PlayStation. And it plays really well. So what you're seeing here, and what I found out, is when you're using this, you want to really use that search option and search for the games you want to play and select them. And then you have a far better chance of playing them without it freezing up for whatever reason, I don't know. So start and selector up here, volume buttons, we got our back button in case you didn't notice or I didn't say already. And then we have our A, B, X, Y. I believe this will be our X button. And we'll twist this a little bit in our minds to create a PlayStation controller for controlling this game.
Choose your destiny. Excellent. Fight.
And this is playing really well, except for there doesn't seem to be any music in there, which I have heard that sometimes these ROMs get put on here without music for whatever reason. I like to have my music, especially when you have such a good speaker like on here. This thing sounds like a decent arcade cabinet in a fold-up form. So let's go ahead and try one more thing here. We're just going to go back to the types. We're going to try to pick an individual game. Let's see, we got all these Game Boy Advance games here. Let's try Special Forces CT or CT Special Forces. This was recently recommended by Metal Jesus Rocks and Radical Reggie, if you watch them. It's actually playing well here. You know, sometimes these games will load up right away, and other times they don't. You know, it freezes up. So that's a reason to keep this memory card, because just in case your other project fails, you're trying to get this new custom firmware on here, you need something to back up on. Plus, you know, you have a good collection of games here built in, mixed with a bunch of not so good games. So if you want to have quick access to these games without building them all into your new memory card, you might want to have this on standby. And let's go ahead and try some Final Burn Alpha here. So, you know, it seems, I don't know, maybe once you get this thing warmed up on this original UI, it starts to run smoother, but there have been so many instances where it freezes up and I have to restart it again. This is actually the longest stretch I've had it go without having to restart it, which is pretty cool. Alright, so we saw how that worked with the user interface that's included on the memory card that you get when you buy this. Usually, it would seem, at least when I bought this recently. So let's go ahead and power it off and try Batocera. Alright, when you power this on through Batocera, you'll notice it takes a second longer maybe to boot up. Maybe a couple seconds longer. And then you'll see this Batocera screen come up here probably around now. There we go. It takes a couple seconds longer for that to come up, it does. So you'll notice with this interface we have, actually it came with things built into it, like in ports. It actually came with a Doom port, which is really nice. It's really fun to play Doom with an actual control stick. I remember as a kid, the neighbor's dad actually had Doom 2, and he used like one of those flight sticks to play on the PC, and it made it so much more fun. It really did. And this is an excellent version of Doom. And the reason to install this is mainly so you get a stable user interface. Also, it's supposed to improve the playability of some of these consoles. You can do a lot more adjustments here. You can see I've started to fill this up. It takes a long time to add all this stuff to the A13 if you want to do this. If you want to go this route, you cannot just drag and drop ROMs onto the memory card like you would with most of these Chinese devices. In fact, it is very difficult to figure it out in general. You need some specific software, certain type of computer. Linux is the best. The best way that I could find out for me to get stuff on here is to actually plug in this wireless adapter to the USB port on the back and connect to the network on my Mac, and from my Mac then I could drag and drop onto it, but through the network connection, which is pretty slow. It's probably a mixture between the speed of the USB ports on the back of this thing and the speed of the internet. I have really good internet, so I don't know, it took a long time. You know, I've put just a couple gigs of games on here and it took hours, lots of patience, but it works, and it works well enough. You just have to have the patience, and that's what you're going to need to do. So if you don't feel like doing that, I kind of recommend just trying to find a way to enjoy the original user interface the best that you can. But I have gone ahead and set this up with quite a bit so far. You can see I've added, let's see, it's got 496 NES games. There's 2 PC Engine games. There's a Commodore 64 game. I got 13 Final Burn games. I got 831 MAME arcade games so far, which is important. We got 3 Neo Geo games. I've got 11 Mega Drive games. I don't even know what this is, but there's Retro Trivia under Pi game, the ports. And, you know, I got, there's 1 Super Nintendo game. I did have to add Pokemon, of course, because... And it says this, you might get this, but it does play anyways. You don't necessarily have to add the BIOS. The main reason for the BIOS for GBA when you install this is so you get that startup screen. You get to see that GBA, the Game Boy startup screen. This is going to bypass that entirely. And it is going to take a moment to load up. But there it is. And they even have a nice little frame going on there. I got a comment recently asking me to... kind of challenging me to play Pokemon on an arcade, and this would be it. And I imagine if you installed a new BIOS or maybe did some other upgrades on the way this plays, you could get it to run even smoother, but it seems to run fine. And we're going to zoom in for the rest of this. So, you know, it works good. I'm not going to go play through the Pokemon game here, but obviously I got Pokemon. So like I said, this is really great to play all of these old school games from NES to Sega Genesis. You know, take the original Contra, for example, on the NES. This is 10 times more fun for me to play on this arcade unit than it is to hold the NES controller or to play it, you know, emulate it in any other way. This is just the best way. And the speakers, they add a little extra flavor to the whole experience. We got frames here. You can change these frames to make it look like an old school TV, all kinds of stuff. You could turn the frame off entirely and make it full screen if you want to do it that way. This is just the way to play, I'm telling you. Aww. telling you, these arcade shooters, all the arcade games, all the games, they're so much better, so much more fun on this thing. Alright y'all, so there we go. I showed you how it comes with and without the memory card. I showed you what you can do by adding a custom firmware like this user interface from Powkiddy. What kind of games it can play? Anything from the beginning of gaming all the way through PlayStation 1. I've even read reviews that say this thing cuts through PlayStation 1 games like a hot knife through butter. It's really nice to me. I think this thing is really great. There are some things here to keep in mind when you upgrade from the original user interface to this one. You are going to need to shut down your console with a menu. You want to go to quit before you hit that power button, because before it was designed for the power button. Now you might cause some problems with your memory card or something if you don't go through and shut down this user interface manually with the quit. And yes, you could use this with your finger on the nub if you have already unscrewed your stick, though I don't recommend it. So we're going to quit and we're going to shut down. Yes. Always put this little guy back in here and put the lid on, because you're going to close it up. If you forget the lid, it's going to bounce around off the screen and leave marks on there, I'm sure. This thing does do HDMI out. However, with Powkiddy, it makes the HDMI out no longer an option. They seem to have kind of left that out in the programming here. So also, this light will stay on to remind you that you have not turned off that on and off button, even though you shut down the software. Another thing to note here is that for some reason, using my wireless dongle, I was only able to get a connection through the bottom port. The top one, it recognized the dongle, but it would never connect to the internet. Only the bottom one for some reason. Keep that in mind. One more thing to note here, guys, is that I've heard a lot of people talk about how this thing just slides all over the place and there's no way to keep it steady on the table, and they buy custom grips for the bottom. Mine came with grips, and they work so well that when I put it on a table, it feels like it's attached to it. I can't move this thing at all. I just can't. So, yours should probably come that way too. In addition to losing the HDMI port, you also lose that little battery picture in the top corner of the screen, so you won't know what the battery level is at anymore with the new user interface. You just kind of have to guess and judge how many hours you've been using it and how long it lasts. Seems to last several hours. I had it on a full battery for hours transferring stuff wirelessly, and it was using extra, kind of working overtime doing the Wi-Fi and stuff, so it seems to be pretty good. I've used it plugged in before and it seems to get pretty hot in the battery, so I don't know if you want to play it plugged in. The last thing I have to do really is maybe I should customize this a little bit. I could put some stickers on here. There's so many things that you could do. Put stickers here, put stickers here. There's a lot of fun stuff you could do there. So, what do y'all think about this? Do you like this device? Do you have an interest in owning your own arcade? This is a really affordable way to do it. Less than $75, 10-inch screen, plays all the arcade games that you'd want from your childhood, and I think it's definitely worth the money. I'll put a link in the description so you can get your own if you'd like. Thanks so much for sticking around to the end of the video. I really appreciate it. If you like this, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. It really helps me out. It encourages me to make more videos like this one. Thanks so much for watching it, and until next time, I'll catch you on the flip side. Peace out.
Childhood, we were all there together, and in denial would play like it was forever. And in the tall woods, we'd stay out of the weather like it was all good. Every day we made it for pleasure. We were saying whatever came to our minds, plain and simple like a tetherball reaching the sky. We were taking new heights on the swing while it was making us fly. Beat the king of the hill and everything will be fine. The thrill of everything we would find, the innocence of a child. You could see